So you may have noticed on my Facebook page that I've been using one oracle deck each week for the last 3 weeks. And that's because I am in the middle of my personal deck challenge, which I did one last year and I did some videos on that. I believe it was in the summer of last year, and Gypsy Chick did that too with some of her tarot decks, and she had great experience as well. I really enjoy doing deck challenges, especially if you're a collector of decks. It's a good way to get reacquainted with perhaps some decks that you haven't worked with in a while, to get to know new decks, and to explore a more long-term relationship with a deck. You know, if you can consider a week more of a long-term relationship. When I do the personal deck challenge, what I like to do is use that deck, one deck exclusively for a week. So I will use that for my daily draws. I'll use it for the daily draws on Facebook. I'll use it for any spreads or meditations that I do for myself for that week. I don't enforce that challenge on the clients that I work with online or in person, because you know, I choose what deck I'm going to use intuitively with each client, which means that I use a different deck for each person, and I might use 2 or 3 different decks. And I can't limit it to just that one deck, because that person might need to see the images from the Wildwood Tarot or the Wild Unknown Tarot instead of Tarot of the Vampires, if that's the deck I happen to be working with that week. So I don't bring the challenge into client readings. It's a personal deck challenge, so it's for my personal workings. And for this deck challenge, which I do a month when I do it, so it's 5 weeks. For this spring's deck challenge, I am working with oracle decks because I've really been using tarot a lot lately, and not so much my oracle decks. I've kind of taken a little bit of a vacation from certain oracle decks. So the deck that I used for the first week of my challenge was Lucy Cavendish's Wild Wisdom of the Fairy Oracle deck, and this is what the backing looks like. And I'll show you some of the images while I talk. So I used this deck a lot when I first got it a while back, and I used it a lot with clients, and had a wonderful experience. The guidebook for this deck is just superb. It really is. It's an incredible guidebook. Very in-depth, very loving, very beautiful. And so I use this deck quite a lot. In fact, it was usually on my altar, and I spent a lot of time with it. I took a bit of a vacation from it this winter. She got to rest. I consider this deck a she. And I took a little bit of a break from her. So working with her for a whole week again, I've formed a really great new relationship with her. And interestingly enough, I found with the consecutive workings that this deck is really very empowering. Maybe it was just because the week that I was working with this deck, I was in a space where I needed to feel empowered, but I have found that this deck is very, very empowering. And so in a new way, I've discovered that about this deck. And I look forward now to really bringing this deck in when I'm working with someone who is going through something and needs to feel very empowered. I found the messages from my personal spreads and my personal daily draws, and even the draws on Facebook that I did with this deck. The messages are really about stepping into your power, being true to what you believe, being your authentic self, and not being afraid of what anyone else thinks. So I have found this deck to be extremely empowering, and as always with Lucy's decks, I really love to meditate with the images, and I found this time I got to do some meditation, and again had an experience that was empowering, about stepping into my power, about honoring the perceptions that others have about energy, whether it's light and dark, honoring that those perceptions are theirs and don't need to be mine. understanding that certain situations, certain relationships aren't healthy in certain ways, and that it's understanding when it's time to work on things and understanding when it's time to let go in certain relationships is very important. And I think that this deck gives a lot of clarity on what space you're in relationship with others, and what it's okay to let go of, and what it would be beneficial to work on bringing more of to a relationship. So Shimmer showed up too quite a bit that week. So I can definitely say that for the first week of the deck challenge, which was 3 weeks ago, I worked with this deck, Wild Wisdom of the Fairy, and had very, very positive and, again, empowering experiences with this deck. If you don't own this deck and you're considering purchasing it, I definitely would say this is worth the purchase. The guidebook is very extensive, very beautifully done, and the cards themselves are just absolutely gorgeous. The size of the cards is wonderful for working with, especially because when I do this personal deck challenge, I really do try to make the focus for myself when I'm doing any kind of personal spreads or ritual or meditation, make the focus really, really inward and about what I am really feeling. And I think that I was really looking at that with this deck the week that I worked with it. What's really going on underneath, how I'm really actually feeling about things, and then if I'm not liking the image of what I'm seeing, then what needs to shift so that I can feel good about my situation, myself, and I found this deck to be very empowering in that way. And this is not a deck that is just positive or just focusing on the light. This is a deck that incorporates, again, our perceptions of light and dark, good and evil energy. I think this deck really marries the entire human experience as seen through a realm of fairy that's very beautiful. Here's Dark Moon. So I had a really good first week with this deck, and I felt really, really excited to focus more on this challenge and get more in depth with the work, and really let this be an opportunity for myself to have some healing and some time to myself. So that was really good for me to step into more, okay, I need to be making time for myself to meditate and to do my own work with tarot and oracle decks, not just for others. So that was really, really powerful and very helpful. But all in all, my first week was wonderful. I had, again, very empowering cards like Shimmer. Crystal Magic showed up a lot for me. Let's see, what else did I see? Oh yes, the Grail Fairy. I love her. She's one of my favorite images in this deck. So cards like that I saw a lot of. And again, this deck is very empowering, so it's one that if you're feeling lost, and Stardust showed up as well, and unsure of what the next best step for you is, of even what feels good for you anymore and what doesn't feel good in your life, this is really, really good deck to work with for that, the Wild Wisdom of the Fairy Oracle. And again, that's by Lucy Cavendish, and Selena Fennick did the artwork for this deck, the same artist that worked with her on Oracle of the Mermaid. So if you're a collector, the artwork is gorgeous too, just from that viewpoint. But very, very powerful and empowering deck, and I'm super, super happy that I chose to reconnect with this deck again. And I think that the time off was really good, because when I started the week with this deck, I approached it from a really fresh perspective and a fresh viewpoint, and not with my previous experiences so close to the surface. It was much more like it was a new deck, and it was the first time we were really working together. So that's why I think it's important, when we feel drawn to give ourselves a break from working with a certain deck, that we honor that, and we give ourselves in the deck a break and explore a new avenue or a new area with other forms of divination, and other artwork, and just give it a break, because then when you come back to it, it's very, very positive and much more enjoyable for us. And it's not so much of a like, now I have to work with this deck because it's my favorite deck and it's the one I always work with, which we can get really stuck with. And we can miss out on a lot of inspiration and creativity from bringing in new energy, new artwork, a different perspective, etc. So I was really happy that we had this break from each other for the winter, and now in spring we're stepping back into working together. And I typically work with the Oracle of the Mermaids a lot in the spring, but I am feeling more drawn to work with this deck. And like I said, my month of working with exclusively one deck for each week, my monthly deck challenge is going to focus just on Oracle cards for right now, because I haven't really been working with them a lot, and I like to kind of, I don't know if push myself is the right term, but when I'm not working with that for a while and I can feel that I'm needing to make a little bit of a shift, and we've talked about this previously, I like to kind of work with a different form in a different area. So taking a break from tarot for 5 weeks, except for my client readings, and focusing just on Oracle decks has been really fun. So for week 2, I worked with the Lay Vampire Oracle deck, also by Lucy Cavendish, and for week 3, it's Friday, so I'm almost done with week 3. I start a new deck on Sundays. I am working with the Wisdom of the Golden Path Oracle deck by Tony Carmine Salerno, and I am having some really, really cool experiences with these decks. So I'm excited to be talking to you guys about that, and I'm going to be making more videos for each week, kind of talking a little bit about my experience. But again, the key word for this deck with me this time, this Wild Wisdom of the Fairy Oracle deck, has been empowerment. I felt extremely empowered working with this deck, and getting rid of all this stuff that are just stories and voices that aren't doing anything for me. Really letting go of that, and I think this deck was extremely helpful for me to step into that space with it. This is also a deck that I love to use with clients anyhow. Like from the beginning, I've loved using it with clients. So I'm feeling very excited to bring this deck in more now with clients as well. I always have amazing experiences with it. So let me know if you guys decide to do the monthly deck challenge, my personal monthly deck challenge. This is a great time to work with meditation, divination, journaling, all of those things that we always talk about how we want to do more of, but it's hard for us to carve some space out. This challenge gives you an excuse to really dive into that and to have fun with that. So if you feel up to it, then join with me and make videos of your own. I would love to watch them as well. Someone wrote down when I was reading the comments for the contest, and hold on, let me look up, because I wrote this down. Someone messaged talking about that, it was Child of Waves who said this, that Oracle decks are a palette of freedom. And I wrote that down in my journal because I thought that that was such a beautiful way to describe working with Oracle decks. There's a structure and a discipline to tarot, which is extremely beneficial, and an artistic quality to the ritual with tarot that is very fulfilling. But Oracle decks really do give us that palette of freedom, and so it can be a nice change of pace to step into a space of working with Oracle decks as well. So if you haven't worked with Oracle cards yet, give it a go. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all, and you'll definitely find a deck and an artist's and author's viewpoint that's beneficial for you. So many blessings, guys. Make sure to let me know how your monthly deck challenge goes, and I will see you in the next video.